Alright guys, so I don't know about you, but especially over the last few weeks during quarantine, staying on top of content has been tough. It's hard to get ahead. I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up. I wake up in the morning, I frantically am trying to figure out what to post on Instagram, and that's just not a good way to live. It interferes with me working on bigger projects, and so I had an idea. Today I want to try something I've never done before, and that's to create an entire week's worth of content in one day. So we need to create at least 7 photos today over the course of the next few hours, have them edited and ready to go up starting tomorrow on Monday. I think it'll give you guys some good tips and ideas on how you can adjust and strategize and ultimately level up your own content creation game. But before we get started, we gotta take the living room, we gotta turn it into the photo studio. I feel like as of lately, especially given quarantine or just impatience, my Instagram feed's been sort of all over the place. So I'm gonna kind of use this as an opportunity to get things back on track. I'm gonna try and shoot mostly everything on this same colored seamless, so there's like some consistent tones, some consistent themes and everything that I'm posting. But most importantly, I don't wanna just post for the sake of posting. One of the best pieces of advice that my sort of manager over at Adobe gave me, Julia, during my residency year, was that she never wanted me to make content for the sake of content. And I think that if you have that motivation of a reason you're making the things you're making, those will naturally be better. And so in an effort to stay true to that, before I started setting anything up, and especially before I started actually shooting the photos for this week, I grabbed my notebook, I jumped on Pinterest, I tried to do some searching, find some inspiration and ideas. And now I think it's important that anytime you're setting out to shoot anything, you have some sense of a plan, you have an idea of what you would like to come out of the other side of the creative process with. Doesn't mean everything has to be dialed in fully, but you'll be way more comfortable getting your hands dirty if there's a little bit of a roadmap to go off of. And so I made a few notes. I know that I want to shoot at least 2 self-portraits. I know that I want to do at least 1 flat lay and an everyday carry flat lay. I know I need to create at least 1 photo for a new podcast that I'm releasing this week, something of New York City, and then finally 1 other photo somewhere in the mix. For starters, we're going to shoot a really clean, minimalist self-portrait on this white background. There's not going to be a lot of extra stuff in it lately. I've been shooting a lot of really clean images and then trying to add different elements of texture and borders and graphics inside of Photoshop. So we're gonna start shooting a photo and then we'll jump into the computer and add some graphics on top of it for this first shot. You see, these first couple shots are okay. They're nothing crazy, but I mean, it's the first shot, so it's very rarely is like the first photo you shoot out of this world, but it gave me a good sort of baseline of like lighting wise, it looks good. It did what I wanted it to do, and that it's like very clean, so it gives us a lot of flexibility in post-production to push it and do something really crazy. I do, however, want to just naturally make the photo slightly more interesting, so I'm gonna grab an extra camera that I have and use that as a prop, and I'll sit down on the floor. Also, just so I have a little bit of space to work with, I'm gonna switch from the 35mm over to the 24-70, give us a little bit of a wider look. I'm looking for some more negative space up at the top of the frame so that I can add some extra graphics when we get into Photoshop. We've got some cool shots, definitely, I mean, room to do some interesting things to them. However, when I was standing up to come actually review the shots, I looked at the viewfinder and I thought this shot of my shoes looked really cool. So these are a custom pair of Vans that were painted by my buddy Nick Ivey last year. And so I thought maybe I'd kind of go back to the shoe theme for a second. So I do have one different idea to really highlight and showcase the shoes, but it's strange. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that I have at least 1 photo in the bag at this point, and I'm gonna go ahead and start shooting the next image because I do have a pretty vivid idea of what I want it to be. So in the past, I've done a lot of photos where I have different objects floating around me, and I'm gonna create a new image for that sort of series. This one is gonna be promoting a new podcast that I'm releasing this week. So it's gonna be myself sitting at the table, which I'm gonna bring into our seamless setup, and I'm gonna have a bunch of my podcast gear floating around me and my computer while I'm working on it. This should be a fairly quick image to shoot. It takes a little bit more time on the editing side, but I've made a bunch of these in the past, so I don't see any major production roadblocks ahead. Basically, the shooting process gets broken into 2 different sections. So right now we're gonna be focusing on getting my frame right. I wanna make sure I have a good expression of me sitting at the table doing my thing. Then once we have that, I'm gonna step out of frame and I'm gonna take a few photos of me throwing different pieces of audio and camera equipment into the air around the scene. But once I have both of the photos of myself and the photos of the object floating around the room, I can then jump into Photoshop, stack all of these images on top of each other, and then individually mask out the elements that are floating, and it should pretty quickly come together into one composited image where I'm sitting at the laptop with my headphones on, where it looks like I'm editing the podcast, and then there's a bunch of other podcast items floating around me. We started out, we shot our first self-portrait, which was a warm-up shot. It was nothing that crazy. It was just kind of testing the waters, but that transitioned into getting a pretty cool shot of me laying on my back with a custom pair of painted shoes up in the air. We then transitioned into shooting a promo image for my new episode of the podcast, which looks really good. I'm really stoked with how that came out. Right after that happened, I saw this gradient that was hitting the building across the street from mine, and it just looked really, really beautiful. So I stuck my head out the window and shot a couple quick frames of the city, which checks off another box we needed. And then finally, we shot a pretty cool little flat lay of my 5-minute journal. You always gotta clean up your table before you do a flat lay, you know, unless you're going for that dirty look. So this is the 5-minute journal. It is a really simplified journaling exercise that I've been trying to do in the morning. Basically, you wake up, you sort of set your intentions for the day, and I think during this quarantine time, being very intentional with everything I'm working on and doing has been important, and it's been an aspect of my life that I need to put more energy into. And so I would like to do a little Instagram blog post about this journal and the impact it's had on myself. I did see this trick Peter did in a video a couple weeks ago. He was shooting another flat lay where he propped, I think it was a knife up a little bit higher. So I'm gonna take this roll of tape, I'm gonna throw it underneath the book and get the 5-minute journal just a little bit higher than the rest of the items. I'm gonna reshoot it a couple times and see if this sort of creates a little bit more of a kind of dynamic look. As I was building out the sort of set for that photo, I realized I kind of used a lot of the items I was planning on using for my everyday carry flat lay, and so I decided that I would push that back, and instead of an everyday carry photo, I'm gonna take some old photos from London that I never shared and post those because I've been looking for a reason to share them. And so finally, I just need one last image. For this last set, I'm gonna bring the table back in. We're gonna go with a little bit of a darker, more dramatic look, and I'm gonna grab a deck of cards, and I'm gonna try and do a little bit more of a magic sleight of hand inspired photo, just because I've been spending a lot of time working on magic again. All right, so we're sitting down to capture the last couple images of the day. I threw on a different jacket. We have a new watch and a deck of cards to add a little bit of character into this last series. I'm gonna shoot a few different frames of me mixing the cards like this, something of the watch to get some sort of details, and make this look as much of like a backroom gambling sequence that I possibly can. All right, so there we go. 7 pictures-ish in one day, in one 24-hour period. Now look, I don't think all of these images are the best images I've ever made. I don't think a single one will probably land in my actual commercial portfolio. Sometimes I do, however, think though there is a benefit in pursuing quantity over quality. Gary would always say is that like quantity produces quality. That even though I spent a bunch of hours today creating a handful of good images, I think in a lot of ways that made me a better photographer than what it would have been if I would have spent the same amount of time creating one great image. To take a day, take some hours. It doesn't have to be a massive amount of time, but see how many creative ideas you can make in one short block of time. I have a weird feeling that jumping between those different ideas is going to spark new thoughts, new ideas, and new techniques into your everyday workflow. That will ultimately push you into becoming a better photographer, a better filmmaker, a better designer, and a better creative. If you guys aren't already and you would like to follow along with me posting all the images we created today, feel free, follow me over on Instagram at Babin and shoot me a DM and let me know that you came from this video, that you weren't following me now, but you're following me because of this video. I hope you guys are staying safe, stay positive. 2020, we're still early. We still have a lot of positive things that can happen. You still have a lot of work that you can make. I still have a lot of work I can make. Like, we can all still do so much good stuff over the course of the next year. That's it for me. I have to edit all these pictures now and edit this video so it's ready to go up tomorrow. And there's a lot of stuff going on. All right, I'll see you guys soon.